I'm Victoria Kolakowski. I am a Superior Court judge in Alameda County, California. I struggled with who I am from a very early age. When I was a kid, the way I would have described it, I would have said I wanted to be a girl because, I mean, obviously I looked at my body and it seemed like I was a guy. And when I was growing up, there was no information about transgender stuff at all. This is before the internet, before websites and things like that. And so there was no information. And I was so scared to talk about it that I didn't even find any information until I went off to college. And then I struggled for a long time because I went to see a therapist for a number of years. I told my parents during the summer break after my first year in college, and I told them this, and my parents rushed me to the emergency room of the hospital because they were so worried about me. And so we found out that, you know, that I could use help, but I needed to see a therapist. And so I was in therapy for a number of years. And I was getting ready to transition. And then I fell in love with a woman. And this was confusing because I didn't know back then that I could be a lesbian and be transsexual. That this is something that nobody knew about. Everybody assumed that you had to be heterosexual in order to be trans. And so, so this threw me for a loop. And so I fell in love with this woman. I got married. And actually, I married a lesbian. And we tried to live the happy heterosexual life together. And then after a while, we realized that really wasn't it. And so I wound up living a dual life. I was myself at home, and at school, I was this guy. And I was in law school, and she was a year behind me in law school. And it was coming into my last semester, and I came off of the spring break, where I spent the whole week being myself. And then I came back to class, where I was trying to be him again. And I realized I just couldn't do it anymore. I felt so guilty. I felt like I was lying whenever I walked into the room. And so I just couldn't do it anymore. So I decided over the weekend, unfortunately, it was April 1st, that I transitioned. I was myself forever. And so I went to class the following week, and I have to admit this was probably a fault of mine. I should have given them a heads up I was doing this. I came to school in a dress. And it took all of the first period of class before everybody in the school knew. And the school did not know what to do with me. They were very, very uncomfortable. They were very upset about the restroom situation. They didn't want me using the men's room, and I didn't want to use it either. They didn't want me using the ladies' room. So the solution they came up with was they gave me a key to the chancellor's private bathroom. Now, there were two problems with this. The first one was the chancellor used that bathroom, and honestly, I didn't want to bump into him. And the second one was that I had, no matter where I was on campus, I had to know I had to plan my rest stops very carefully long in advance, because the library in our law school, I'd have to go down an elevator up and up into another building in order to go to the one bathroom on campus I was allowed to use. And then no one talked to me. None of my classmates would speak to me at all. I was very surprised. Normally there are people who are in favor of you, and there are people who have a problem with you, and a bunch of people in the middle who don't care. No one spoke to me, except one day 4 or 5 guys came up to me together as a pack, and they said, "We know that your wife is a lesbian. Are you just doing this so you can stay with her?" And I said, "No, I've been seeing therapists about this for years." And they said, "Oh, okay." And that was the last anybody from my law school, my classmates, spoke to me. And so I fought with the school. They wouldn't let me graduate with my name until I got the legal name change paperwork through. They managed to hold up the paperwork until after I graduated. And then I applied to take the bar exam. And the Bar Association denied my application because they said I was not of sound mind because I was transsexual. And so I had to appeal that to the state Supreme Court in Louisiana where I was going to school. And this is Louisiana too. And I was studying for the bar exam. I didn't even know if I could take it. And so I had to file a petition with the state Supreme Court, which very quickly ruled in my favor. In a 2-word decision, I think it said appeal granted. My first victory in court, and I really didn't feel like using it as a writing sample. It felt uncomfortable talking about myself that way. Because my law school, the people at the placement office told me I should come out to people in my cover letter. Because I shouldn't be misleading people into thinking them really a woman. And so I practiced law for a year in Louisiana, and then my spouse, who's now my ex, graduated from law school. We moved to the Bay Area, where I discovered that it was very hard for me to get a job. I interviewed at firms, and they would call me in for an interview. They loved my resume. The interview would go great, and then I would call back 2 or 3 weeks later, and they would say, we're sitting here trying to write the letter. We just don't know how to say this, but we just don't think you'd be a good fit. And so I assumed that everybody knew. And so I got a phone call one day from a recruiter after I finally got a job because somebody didn't check my references. They just hired me on the spot because they were so impressed. But I got a phone call from a recruiter, and the recruiter said, I know the perfect place for you. And I said, they're not going to hire me because I'm transgender. And she said, oh, that's ridiculous. And she called me back 2 days later and said, Vicki, you're right. They said that one of the partners would quit if they hired you. I mean, I couldn't believe that somebody would actually quit their job because they wouldn't want to work with me. But, you know, despite all the stuff that I encountered over my career, even if, like, the thing was I never gave up. If there was a time when I was unemployed, it meant there was more time for me to do work on behalf of the community. And there was more time for me to give back to other people. And if 99% of the people were going to be problems, that means I just needed to talk to 100. And so I just kept at it. And I learned working, I found jobs in the private sector. I found jobs working for the state where people would give me a chance. And eventually I became a senior level attorney for the state. And then I became an administrative law judge. And 3 years ago now, I started running for judge, and I lost. And I didn't give up. I ran again last year, and I won. And the thing that was greatest about it was that even though I'm the first openly transgender trial court judge in the country, it never came up in the campaign in a negative way. My opponents were honorable and didn't make it an issue. It came up more, you know, in the runoff when people thought everybody was getting ready to write the story about how I was going to be the first one, and then they realized I had a runoff. But otherwise, I've gotten much more attention since then. And so I guess the message from that I've gotten is that you just don't give up. People say it gets better, and it doesn't necessarily always get better. But if you're really persistent, and if you're good, and if you don't give up, there's enough people out there, I really believe, who will give you a chance. As long as you don't give up and you keep on trying and you try to make a difference. And people see that in you. If you're not just only about yourself and if you're about other people, people respond to that. And so I've now got the greatest job. I am so happy. Now I've got my own bathroom in my chambers, so I don't have to share it with anyone. But I guess in some ways, people sometimes ask me about, about all the stuff that I just talked about that I had in the past. And it's just the best revenge is success. And I'm just so happy now that all the stuff I went through before is just stuff that helped bring me to where I am now. And so for people who may be struggling, encountering discrimination, might be encountering hostility, you can find people who love and support you and stick with them and just never give up. And if you just do that, I really believe that you can make a life where you can be happy. You may not be rich and famous, but happiness is really what I think life is about.